Touch my Ferrari. Preston Vance's laughter exploded through the pristine air of Beverly Hills Motor Works like a shotgun blast. The $500,000 Portofino sat idle behind him, engine ticking faintly, as if insulted by its own silence. Aaliyah Monroe didn't blink. Grease-smudged coveralls, sleeves rolled just below her elbows, and posture steady as steel. She wasn't there for permission. I said, she repeated coolly. You've got a harmonic misalignment between your turbo system and fuel injection. That's why you're losing power mid-acceleration. Preston turned a full circle, waving his hands theatrically as if mocking a courtroom. Let me guess, you diagnosed that using street magic? Or maybe you earned your degree from YouTube University? No one laughed loudly, but the room buzzed. With cowardly smiles, she was the only black woman in a room full of tailored suits and certified technicians. None dared to defend her. Aaliyah kept her voice level. 5 minutes of tuning, and your Ferrari will hum smoother than it did leaving the factory in Maranello. Preston snatched his keys back like she was contagious. Not in this lifetime. The mechanics looked away. The silence was thick with judgment. Not for her, but for the man too blind to see who was actually standing in front of him. She left nothing behind but her business card on the windshield and a smile that knew something no one else did. 12-year-old Aaliyah Monroe lay flat on her back under her grandfather's '69 Chevelle, the California sun baking the sidewalk just outside the garage. Her fingers trembled slightly as she gripped the socket wrench, the metal warm and familiar. You hear that tick? Her grandfather asked, voice slow and deep like a blues guitar riff. She nodded. Timing's off. A smile curled beneath his peppered beard. Exactly. Engines do not lie. They do not care what school you went to or what skin you wear. They respond to truth, baby girl. Always remember that. That was the first lesson. Not just about engines, but about the world that would doubt her before hearing her. Years later, those lessons became armored. AT-28. Aaliyah Monroe held a mechanical engineering degree from MIT, graduated top 5 in her class. She had spent 3 years at McLaren's hybrid division in Woking, England, helping engineer the synchronization between combustion engines and electric motors for the P1. That she could have stayed. Could have gone on to work in Formula One. But when her grandmother's health declined back in Compton, Aaliyah packed her things and returned home. She did not inherit a shop. She built one from scratch. Monroe Precision Motors, a mobile diagnostics unit that serviced luxury cars all over Southern California. 6-month wait list. Repeat clients from out of state. No signage. No gimmicks. Just results. Still, people stared when she showed up. They did not see an engineer. They saw a woman with brown skin, covered in oil stains, stepping out of a matte black van. And at Beverly Hills Motor Works, none of the technicians knew who she really was. Preston Vance definitely did not. He saw a street mechanic from the wrong zip code, not the woman who had written the acoustic diagnostics protocol used in high-performance electric superchargers, not the woman who had once redesigned a cooling system that saved McLaren $1.2 million in trackside repairs. But when she spoke, calmly, precisely, describing the harmonic imbalance in his Ferrari engine, something shifted in the room. The laughter had volume, but not conviction. Logan Pierce, the senior technician, stole a glance at her as she walked out. He did not say a word, but his grip on the torque wrench tightened. Brian Keller, the shop manager, kept reorganizing paperwork he did not need to touch. N01 said it out loud, but something about the way she said 5 minutes made them wonder if she was the only person in that shop who actually knew what she was doing. And outside, the business card she left on the windshield did not bend under the California wind. That IT stayed exactly where she left it. Just like her name, waiting to be remembered. Brian Keller cleared his throat awkwardly. Preston, maybe we should at least hear her out. We've tried everything in the manual. The factory specs. Preston cut him off with a sharp glance. Brian, I pay $50,000 a year to this shop for factory-grade maintenance, not street poetry from a grease-stained YouTube graduate. He turned back to Aaliyah with the smile of a man who had never been told no and meant it. This is Beverly Hills Motor Works, not some pop-up repair alley in Watts. We deal in precision, in pedigree, not guesses from someone who probably learned about torque ratios watching TikToks. A few of the technicians chuckled, but the sound lacked conviction. Logan Pierce looked down, pretending to adjust a wrench that did not need fixing. Aaliyah stood still, arms crossed, the fluorescent lights catching just enough reflection in her eyes to show she was still listening, just not buying. The issue, she repeated, voice steady, is not your sensors. It is the harmonic desynchronization between your twin turbo and injection sequencing. It's throwing off your power curve every third cycle. Preston tossed his Ferrari key from one hand to the other, theatrically. You hear that, gentlemen? Harmonic desynchronization. Sounds fancy, does not it? He leaned in, eyes narrowing. Let me make something crystal clear. You will never touch my car. Not today. Not ever. Take your fiction and your flashlight diagnostics and go back to whatever alley you came from. He slapped the keys down on Brian's desk and turned to the others. Next time, screen the walk-ins better. This is an AutoZone. Silence. Cold, clinical silence. Even the HVAC hum felt louder than the technician's breathing. N01 defended. Her. Not Brian. Not Logan. Not even the younger apprentices who had nodded during her initial explanation. But Aaliyah had seen that silence before. She stepped toward the exit, her boots echoing across the polished concrete floor, but paused just long enough to speak clearly over her shoulder. When this shop still hasn't fixed your problem 2 weeks from now, she said, calm as ever, my card will still be on your windshield. Nobody moved, nobody laughed, and nobody, not even Preston, could bring himself to tear up that card. Outside, Aaliyah walked back to her matte black van and drove off into the early sunset, leaving behind only one thing that refused to be ignored: doubt. IT settled quietly in the corners of the shop, eyeing the sidelong glances from apprentice to tech. In the pause before restarting an engine diagnostic, and in Logan Pierce's mind, where her exact phrasing about turbo sequencing repeated like a riddle he suddenly wanted to solve. 3 days later, Preston Vance leaned back in a leather chair at the Polo Terrace, a private lounge where billionaires traded war stories like stock tips. A waiter poured his wine. His Rolex glinted under the soft lights. You should have seen her face, Preston said with a smirk. This street mechanic, coveralls, oil stains, no name, trying to tell me what's wrong with my Ferrari. She actually said something about harmonic desynchronization. He chuckled, mocking her words. David Madsen, a fintech CEO, laughed into his cocktail. Let me guess, she learned that on Instagram? The whole table joined in. Jokes flew. Glasses clinked. Preston didn't know that across the city, someone else was saying her name. Aaliyah Monroe was under the hood of a vintage Aston Martin when the sound of soft Italian leather heels tapped across her shop floor. She looked up. A sleek McLaren P1 had pulled into the garage, spotless, humming like a symphony. A woman in her 50s stepped out, dressed sharply, with posture like someone used to being in command. You must be Aaliyah Monroe, the woman said, extending a hand. I'm Claudia Moretti. I'm the engineering director for Ferrari West Coast. Aaliyah raised an eyebrow but wiped her hands and shook hers. I didn't know Ferrari made house calls. Claudia smiled. Normally we don't. But last week at the International Automotive Engineers Conference in San Diego, your name came up. Aaliyah stayed quiet. A colleague said you diagnosed a harmonic resonance issue on a Portofino. Just by ear. She nodded. That's right. Claudia glanced around the workshop, small but spotless. Every tool labeled. Every cabinet locked. 2 engines disassembled like surgical projects. Where did you train? Mechanical engineering. MIT. Then, McLaren Racing in Woking. I worked on engine harmonics and hybrid torque sync in the P1. Left when my grandmother got sick. Claudia paused. You're telling me you helped design acoustic balance systems at McLaren, then came back to run a mobile garage out of South Central? Aaliyah crossed her arms. My zip code never affected my skill set. Claudia's eyes narrowed, not in doubt, but in admiration. You know, the issue you diagnosed? Our Maranello team has been trying to isolate that problem for 6 months. It's rare, nearly impossible to detect without invasive equipment. I heard at the moment the engine throttled. Unbelievable, Claudia whispered. Then she took a slow breath. We want to make you an offer. Aaliyah stayed silent. We'd like to hire you as an exclusive technical consultant for Ferrari West Coast Division. 5-year contract. $2 million. She stepped closer. And we want to license your acoustic diagnostic method. Royalties included. We believe it can change the way preventative maintenance is done. Aaliyah didn't blink. Then she smiled. "I'll accept," she said. Claudia nodded, but Aaliyah held up a finger. "On one condition." Claudia raised an eyebrow. "Go on. I want my first case to be a test. A certain Portofino from Beverly Hills Motor Works. Been giving folks some trouble." The Italian woman smiled knowingly. "You mean Preston Vance's Ferrari?" Aaliyah didn't respond. She didn't need to, but her eyes were calm, focused, and far from finished. Claudia nodded again, this time with full understanding. "Then let's teach a lesson in elegance through excellence." That evening, as Aaliyah reviewed the diagnostic reports Claudia had emailed from Ferrari's private database, her phone rang. Brian Keller's name flashed across the screen. She answered without emotion. "Aaliyah," he said quickly, I know we don't deserve to ask, but the Ferrari's failing. Worse than before. Preston doesn't know I'm calling, but we're stuck." Her voice was steady. "What are you asking me for?" He hesitated. "Do you still think you can fix it?" "I always could," she said simply. That was never the question. He fell quiet. "Tell Preston," she continued. "Ferrari Corporation is sending a consultant. Do not mention my name. Just say someone certified by the company wants to take a look. You'd still help. This is bigger than him, Brian. Let the truth do the heavy lifting." Then she ended the call. And the next morning, she picked out her best uniform, polished her tool case, and prepared to step into the very workshop that once laughed at her. Not for revenge, for demonstration. The next morning, Preston Vance adjusted his cufflinks as he stepped out of his matte gray Range Rover in the Beverly Hills Motor Works parking lot. His pace was brisk, confident, shoulders squared like a man certain that order was finally being restored. Mike, the shop manager, met him halfway with a nervous smile. "Mr. Vance, good morning. Ferrari sent a world-class technical consultant. She arrived an hour ago with an official company representative." Preston straightened his tie. Finally, took long enough. He didn't ask for the name. Didn't care. All that mattered was that this nightmare was ending. "She's already examining the vehicle in the VIP service bay," Mike said. Preston walked in without hesitation, expecting the smell of engine grease and expensive cologne, expecting some older Italian man in a lab coat. What he found instead stopped him in his tracks. Two women stood over the open hood of his Ferrari Portofino. One, poised and unmistakably European, was dressed in a sleek navy suit, tablet in hand. The other wore an immaculate red and black technician's uniform, her braids neatly tied back, a Ferrari patch stitched onto her chest. Aaliyah Monroe. She looked up and met his eyes calmly. "Hello again, Mr. Vance." Preston's face went pale. His posture collapsed half an inch. What is this?" His voice cracked. "You? This is some kind of sick joke." Claudia Moretti stepped forward, perfectly composed. "Mr. Vance, allow me to introduce Ms. Aaliyah Monroe, Ferrari's newly appointed West Coast technical consultant, a graduate of MIT, former engine strategist at McLaren Racing, and now the creator of a diagnostic method that will be implemented globally in all Ferrari workshops." Preston blinked rapidly. No, you don't understand. This woman can't. She already has," Claudia interrupted, voice firm. "She identified the root cause of your Ferrari's failure in less than 10 minutes. Harmonic desynchronization between turbo boost and fuel injection timing. Exactly what she told you during her first visit." Aaliyah wiped her hands with a cloth, her expression calm, almost surgical. "It took 15 minutes to correct," she said. "Impossible," Preston muttered, his voice shrinking. "Test it," Claudia said coolly. Reluctantly, Preston approached the vehicle. The key sat on the passenger seat. His hands trembled slightly as he picked it up and slid into the driver's seat. He turned the key. The engine purred to life, not just fixed, refined. The harshness was gone. The flutter at idle vanished. Acceleration flowed like silk. He revved it lightly. The sound was symphonic, perfectly balanced. The technicians gathered around. Logan Pierce stepped forward, his voice almost reverent. "She was right," he said, glancing at Preston and then at Aaliyah. "The harmonic imbalance. It's gone." Preston climbed out slowly, staring at the machine like it had just betrayed him. "You how?" he whispered. Aaliyah met his gaze. "Competence," she said quietly. "The same thing you said people like me couldn't possibly have." His jaw locked. Around the workshop, several employees had pulled out their phones, quietly filming, not interfering. Claudia didn't stop them. Preston's face twitched. This can't go public. Oh, it already has, Claudia replied, her tone flat. The video of your last encounter with Ms. Monroe has surpassed 800,000 views. It's currently trending on X and LinkedIn. Preston staggered back a step. You can't be serious. I'm very serious, Claudia said. And the world seems quite interested in how a so-called street mechanic outperformed every certified technician on your payroll and did it after you publicly humiliated her. He turned to Mike, grasping at any lifeline. Tell me this is staged. Tell me this is some publicity stunt. Mike avoided his eyes. No, sir. Everything checks out. Ferrari's headquarters has already confirmed her credentials. And the board, they're monitoring this situation closely. Preston tried to speak, but no words came out. Then, just above the quiet hum of the engine, Aaliyah spoke one last time. I told you some people need to learn the hard way, she said. Turns out, the lesson showed up right on schedule. By noon, the video had crossed 800,000 views. The title said, "It all. Millionaire CEO humiliates black mechanic. Begs for help days later." Comments flooded in. Hashtags were everywhere. Hashtag competence has no color. Hashtag genius mechanic. Hashtag Ferrari fix in 15. Aaliyah Monroe's calm face in the clip, standing firm while Preston mocked her, became a symbol. Not just for mechanics, but for every skilled person ever doubted because of how they looked or where they came from. At Sterling Dynamics headquarters, Preston Vance sat frozen in his chair. His phone buzzed non-stop. Emails, headlines, angry investors. Lauren Briggs, his executive assistant, burst into his office with panic written all over her face. Preston, we have a serious problem. He didn't even look up. What now? 3 corporate partners pulled out this morning. They cited misalignment with values. One of them specifically referenced the video. Preston ran a hand down his face. I told you it would blow over. It's not blowing over. It's catching fire. She dropped a folder onto his desk. Inside were printouts, screenshots, tweets, news headlines. CNN Tech. Ferrari hires genius mechanic after viral humiliation. Forbes. MIT grad fixes what millionaires team couldn't. To Wall Street Journal. Corporate image crumbles. Underweight of biases. Company stock was down 22% in a single day. And now, Ferrari had just made their next move. Claudia Moretti stood at a podium in San Francisco, speaking to a small crowd of reporters. Ferrari has always believed in innovation, she said. But innovation means nothing without inclusion. She paused, then continued. Today, we're publicly updating our diversity and conduct policy. Clients, consultants, and partners found to engage in discriminatory behavior will be banned across our entire consortium, including Ferrari, Maserati, and Alfa Romeo. Gasps filled the room. Yes, Claudia confirmed. That includes Mr. Preston Vance. Across the city, Preston's phone buzzed again. A message from Ferrari's board. Effective immediately, your client privileges have been revoked. Another from Maserati. Then, Alfa, his entire luxury brand circle, gone. Back at Beverly Hills Motor Works, Aaliyah zipped up her tool case. The job was done. Clean, efficient, quiet. Preston stood nearby, looking like someone who had just watched his house burn down. His lips moved slowly, unsure of how to even begin. I don't understand, he mumbled. Why would you do this to me? Aaliyah turned to him. Calm, grounded, powerful without raising her voice. I didn't do anything to you, she said. You did this to yourself. The moment you decided my worth was based on my skin, not my skill. The entire shop went. Still, Claudia stepped beside her. Discrimination has consequences, Mr. Vance. Our clients expect better. So does the world. Logan Pierce, the senior technician, stood a few feet back. His head was down. I'm sorry, he said quietly. We should have listened to her from the start. Preston's eyes welled with rage, not just from what he'd lost, but from knowing it was all his own fault. You ruined me, he whispered. No, Aaliyah said gently. You let your prejudice do that. She looked around at the shop, at the same space where she was laughed at, belittled, dismissed. Then she looked back at Preston, now broken, powerless, and watched. You could have had your car fixed in 5 minutes, she said. But your ego demanded a show. He said nothing because there was nothing left to say. His phone buzzed one last time. He picked it up on instinct. The screen showed, Board of Directors, urgent call. He answered on speaker without thinking. Preston, a voice said sharply. An emergency meeting has been called. Effective immediately, your position as CEO is under review. This situation has become untenable. The call ended. Preston's hands dropped to his sides. Aaliyah turned and walked toward the exit. As she passed the glass doors, sunlight spilled across her shoulders. She didn't look back, because she didn't need to. The point had been proven. Point 6. Months later, the applause was thunderous inside the Geneva Convention Hall. Red banners bearing the prancing horse of Ferrari lined the stage. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward, eager to capture every word. At the center stood Aaliyah Monroe, poised behind the podium in a crimson silk suit. Confident, composed, unstoppable. And so, today, said the host, Ferrari proudly presents our Global Innovator of the Year award to the woman whose acoustic diagnostic method has revolutionized our engineering worldwide, Ms. Aaliyah Monroe. She stepped forward as the crowd rose to their feet. What had started in a cramped garage in South LA, with her grandfather's calloused hands guiding her across the underbelly of a broken-down Chevelle, had now circled the globe. Her patented method was being taught in Ferrari training academies. Maserati and Alfa Romeo had adopted it. She'd signed a $5 million licensing deal with McLaren. Her name was on every document, every blueprint. She was a millionaire at 29, but her expression that night wasn't pride. It was purpose. She adjusted the mic and spoke softly, but the hall quieted as if the ceiling might fall. Competence, she began, has no color, no gender, no zip code. She scanned the audience, a room full of engineers, CEOs, and young women in the front rows watching her like she was a mirror of what could be. When someone mocks you because of what you look like, or where you come from, they're not defining your worth. They're revealing the limits of their own vision. Silence. Then roaring applause. 100 miles away, at a dusty roadside diner off Interstate 5, Preston Vance stood behind the counter, wiping down a chipped Formica table for the 4th time that hour. His tie was gone. So was his mansion. So was the $50 million in stock he'd lost when his board forced him out. Now he wore a short-sleeved shirt with someone else's name stitched above the pocket. No one there recognized him. No one cared who he used to be. He heard the TV above the coffee station change channels. The words Ferrari Award Ceremony flashed on screen. He turned. The sound was off, but he didn't need sound to recognize her. Aaliyah Monroe stood on the stage, smiling, shaking hands with foreign dignitaries. Someone in the diner chuckled. Hey, that's the lady from that viral video, right? She fixed that guy's car in, 5 minutes? Legend. Preston looked away. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a cracked, borrowed phone, found the live stream, watched her, alone, unnoticed, forgotten. Her final words rang in his ears. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so extraordinary that the people who once tried to break you don't even have a seat at the table anymore. He locked the screen, stood still, and for the first time in his life, there was no one left to clap for him.